This year we filmed 2 evocative Italian-inspired gardens in England. Each garden embodies a very different energy and aesthetic. One offering a dramatic, formal and visually rhythmic design, the other creating a more relaxed, enclosed and cocooning space. Both are filled with inspiration and ideas to absorb, incorporate and experiment with in our own gardens at home. First, let's explore the Italian garden in the historic pleasure grounds of the Lost Gardens of Heligan, located in Cornwall, southwest England, where the Gulf Stream blesses much of the county with a mild maritime climate. This Italianate garden is a gorgeously soothing and transportive enclosed sensory space where the gentle movement and soft percussion of the water fountain draws you into the high-hedged garden room. I find that even when the space is shared with other visitors, the garden retains a rather magical feeling of seclusion and is conducive to leisurely contemplation. And that is exactly why the garden was created in 1906 as a personal private retreat for the squire of the Heligan estate, Jack Tremaine, the 7th generation of Tremaines at Heligan, reflecting Jack's personal passion for Italy. The olive trees, palms, terracotta pots, fountain and loggia are all immediately evocative of Mediterranean charm, but the style signatures in this garden include eclectic planting from all around the globe and a very lovely colour palette. The carefully curated planting palette immediately creates a sophisticated feel against the living green backdrop. There is the delightful play between cool pale colours and rich dark tones, united by the rosy warmth of pink and the merest hints of fiery red. Icy colours include tall, airy drifts of white Japanese anemones grounded by the pairing of low-mounding white Mexican daisies, complementing the cool silvery foliage of olive trees, silver-grey leaves of lamb's ear Stachys byzantina, green and white variegated agave, and blue-grey succulent rosettes in the pot display. In contrast, dark and rich colour is provided by the gorgeously glossy architectural aeoniums and deliciously fragrant heliotrope. Rosy warmth emanates from glowing heads of Hylotelephium and the delicate pink flower spikes of Hedge Germander, Teucrium lucidrys, just turning to seed but still looking very pretty, lining the paved pathway, attracting bees with its nectar and pollen-rich flowers. Traditionally used in knot gardens, evergreen perennial Hedge Germander is a popular alternative to box if you, like us, are unfortunate enough to suffer with box blight or box moth caterpillars. Plants can be left loose and free or closely clipped in autumn or spring for a clean, defined profile. Sometimes the merest hint of punchy colour can be all the more powerful. This glowing Cole's pelargonium adds a spark to the pot collection. The warm terracotta-toned loggia wall in the Italian garden provides a backdrop that subtly enhances flower and foliage colour and immediately evokes earthy, colour-drenched Italian buildings inspired by the natural hues of mineral pigments like sienna, ochre, umber and pink Tuscan clay, and the powdered terracotta that was traditionally mixed with plaster to apply to walls, a technique once employed in ancient Rome. In our own gardens, earthy natural colours can transform a fence panel, shed or the side of a building to create a vertical canvas that adds great warmth to the space even on the most overcast days and serves to intensify the lushness of green foliage. The beautiful paint in the Italian garden is very versatile. It could be used to intensify the impact of cool blue and purple flowers through colour contrast, or to add further heat to the fire of orange and red blooms. In Italian Renaissance gardens, the loggia tended to be a rather more grand affair, like the beautiful late Renaissance structure Loggia Valmarana in Vicenza, originally intended as a meeting place for intellectuals and academics to exchange ideas. In contrast, the loggia at Heligan has a welcomingly rustic feel to its simplicity, and it too is a meeting place for minds from diverse cultures and backgrounds from all around the globe, as visitors sit to rest in its shade or shelter from energetic Cornish rain, greet one another and begin to exchange impressions and ideas. This is a garden of sensibility created for the senses, where the relatively small enclosed space magnifies sound and scent. There is the lively, playful acoustic of the fountain splashing in the pool, as well as birdsong from periphery trees and the gentle, satisfying crunch of gravel underfoot. Tactile elements are important in every garden, and here we find strokable lamb's ear. We can brush legs or hands against Hedge Germander, releasing its spicy scent. Rubbing a sprig of rosemary for that heady herbal hit is almost instinctual, and the rich vanilla-esque fragrance of heliotrope is irresistible. The symmetry of the pool area is very pleasing to the human perceptual system and reflects the principles of balance, order and harmony in Italian Renaissance gardens. The geometric formality of the pool is softened by the romance of planting choices and the delightful fountain, showing a Putto, a winged child holding a dolphin. It is a reproduction of the original bronze sculpture by Verrocchio, created around 1470 for the Villa Medici in the hills near Florence. And the enchanting thing about this composition is its spiral design and the way Verrocchio evolved a pose in which all views of the sculpture are of equal significance and aesthetic satisfaction. That is such an important consideration to keep in mind when selecting a sculpture or fountain for our own gardens. If we are placing it in a central position, it should look equally charming from all angles, and the characterful old olive in the restful enclave alongside the pool delivers similar 360-degree appeal and interest. It is one of nature's own fine sculptures, a thing of natural gnarly beauty and aged charm, viewable from all angles. We will return to the Lost Gardens of Heligan, but now a change of scene. Let's head some 160 miles eastward from Cornwall to Poole in Dorset, a popular resort on the sunny south coast of England. Compton Acres is a 10-acre landscape with a series of gardens created in the 1920s by a man who could be described as a smooth operator, the margarine entrepreneur Thomas William Simpson, who assembled a collection of sculptures and rare and exotic plants reflecting his global travels. Sadly, after the Second World War, the high-maintenance garden had fallen into great decline. The impenetrable and overgrown land was restored by a London architect, J. Stanley Beard, who opened Compton Acres to the public. And several custodians later, it remains a privately owned popular destination for garden enthusiasts. Whereas the Italian garden at Heligan was designed for an intimate, immersive and personal experience. The Italianate garden at Compton Acres is a bold statement landscape created to impress with its grandeur as soon as it is viewed from the balustraded terrace above. The garden entrance brings the visitor through the dim passageway of the limestone-walled grotto tunnel, intended to engender a sense of bright Mediterranean light on emergence. The enclosed entranceway also creates a great sense of anticipation by concealing the wider view of the garden beyond, and this is a design approach that can be incorporated into our own gardens. Possibilities range from the grand to the simple, encased green tunnels of trees or a rock-hewn passageway. Arches or pergolas covered with climbing plants, garden screens, even a single-placed topiary column by an entranceway creates a sense of conceal and reveal as one enters a garden, or by taking your guests through an enticingly curtained doorway, the similar effect of delayed view and heightened anticipation can be achieved. Passing through the grotto to reach the terrace, we are also greeted by the pleasing cadence of falling water from a dramatic centrepiece fountain in the cruciform pool. The garden also showcases impressive classical themed statuary, and there are layers of rhythmic punctuation from rows of monumental clipped yew obelisks towering between ball-finialed columns, their festoons supporting sweetly scented scrambling Clematis montana Elizabeth. The Tuscan pink Italianate villa, which is used for private functions, adds to what feels, at least to a British eye, like a very convincing sense of Italian design. The rhythmic spacing of pillars and geometric topiary flanking the central pool embody the Italian Renaissance ideal of creating harmony through order, symmetry and balance. But the Italian garden at Compton Acres also conveys the heart and the humour of Renaissance gardens. Water tricks were popular with Renaissance garden owners. Unsuspecting visitors dressed in their finery would step on a mechanism that triggered a soaking jet of water aimed in their direction. But at Compton Acres, the humour is gentle, visitor-friendly and dry. At the northeast boundary, posing on a plinth in the domed Tempietto, stands the very fine athletic form of the youthful Bacchus, Roman god of wine, inviting appreciation and admiration with his smooth-skinned appearance, noble profiled face and proud classical stature. But in wry contrast, at the southwest end of the central pool, above the semicircular pond, is an older, rather time-worn Bacchus, his lived-in visage showing the results of years of unrestrained indulgence and the excesses of life as a god of pleasure. His older, bearded face, rather grotesque as it spews pond water, rather than elegantly imbibing wine, having none of the dignity and poise of his youthful counterpart. Beauty in a garden is always revered, but a sense of playfulness is another valued and charming element that can be used to instill a carefree feeling within us. And this is the intention of the lively and animated ornamental lead figures set on stone pedestals along the raised terrace, which have the feeling of Italian putti, but are all from early 20th century arts and crafts movement designs. dramatically vibrant summer and autumn bedding reminds us that Italian Renaissance gardens were filled with joyful colour as well as iconic evergreens in precisely clipped, formal styles. At Compton Acres, the long beds in a single emphatic colour reinforce the symmetry of the overall design, but add their living pulse to the lines and angles. Salvia Amistad, with its rich purple tubular flowers, offers quite an informal habit for such a grand design, but its rectangular petticoat of bedding gives it a more manicured and ornamental feel, a clever design idea to take away. The symmetry of the Renaissance style in the grand Italian garden continues through pedimented gateways leading to Palm Court, an adjacent enclosed rectangular garden which has the feel of a private destination for secret assignations, planted with specimen palms in central beds. The palms flank an impressive antique Venetian wellhead carved from a single block of stone. Throw in a coin and make a wish. There was an ancient Roman tradition of tossing a coin into rivers or oceans to ensure that the gods ruling these watery domains would grant the traveller safe passage. I particularly love the carved fountain of a Putto joyously holding his fish aloft, surrounded by scallop shells and inquisitive frogs. Under the characterful aged patina is white Carrara marble, quarried in Tuscany since Roman times. The motif of a child with a fish or dolphin symbolised abundance, fertility and prosperity in the ancient Roman era. Frogs were associated with harmony and life force, creatures of metamorphosis and transformation, tied to both the earth and the water, sacred animals protected by Venus, goddess of love. This ancient symbolism, revived in the Italian Renaissance, is celebrated in the Fountain of the Frogs in Rome, a modern creation installed in 1924. The very soft and pretty colour palette in the Palm Court befits the symbolism and romantic charms of the space. If I had to choose one element from the Italian designs at Compton Acres and the Italian garden at Heligan that embodies the different sensibilities between them, it would probably be the planters. At Compton Acres these are ornate garden urns, and at Heligan more rustic feeling terracotta pots and olive jars. All are immensely pleasing and fitting to their respective design environments. Whether planting containers are relaxed and rustic pots, or more formal and classical designs, heavily textured or smooth to touch, elegantly simple or colourful and playful, historically accurate, or completely eclectic. The containers we choose for our gardens help set the tone, mood and sense of place that we are trying to create to give our space an extra dimension of experiential and aesthetic pleasure. At the Lost Gardens of Heligan, several of these are left empty, and while this may be a design statement in itself, it also serves as a poignant reminder to the visitor of changes in the upkeep of the estate when gardeners left to do their duty in the First World War. 13 Heligan men went to war and just 4 survived. The gardens began a slow decline over the following decades. The Heligan estate had been a plant hunter's paradise from the mid-18th century, with rare and exotic specimens planted around tiered lakes in its sheltered, steep-sided valley. But like so many high-maintenance estates at the time, it depended on a large team of gardeners for its upkeep, and in the Great War, young men were away fighting, many dying in the trenches and on battlefields, in the mud and earth that was once for them the source of life, growth and nurture. As a child, I met an old family friend and neighbour who had worked as a gardener at Heligan. I wish I had asked more about the estate. After decades of neglect, the gardens underwent an inspired high-energy restoration project in the 1990s, pioneered by Sir Tim Smith, also known for developing the visionary Eden Project in Cornwall and Eden Project Morecambe, which is under development. Partnered at Heligan by his friend, the builder, the late John Nelson, which came about following an initial machete-assisted foray into the intriguing overgrown garden with John Willis, a descendant of the generations of Tremaine family. Today, the diverse range of planting landscapes include extensive rhododendron and camellia collections, the subtropical jungle, an alpine ravine, and the charming original wildflower and produce gardens, making this one of the most famous botanical gardens in the UK. Look at the view. In part 2, we explore the link between Compton Acres and Kyoto and the creation of the beautiful Japanese garden here in the 1920s. But for now, we thank you for touring the Italian gardens with us. We appreciate your company and hope you'll join us here next time. It's goodbye and arrivederci from Apple P Fern C.